Advertisers who optimize for purchases. History shows your costs are going to be pretty consistent this month, but you need to be prepping for what's around the corner in Q4. In this episode of the Paid Traffic Forecast, we're going to go through what the numbers say for you over the next 30 days, the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to, what the projection models say about your performance, and the 3 plays that you need to run in order to be prepped for Q4. More on that right after this. Hey there, and welcome to the August 2025 Paid Traffic Forecast for Purchase Advertisers. Excited to have you today. My name's John Belcher. That's Ross Pietersen, who's the head of media buying here at Decyphered. And we're going to dive in and talk with you about what's around the corner for you and your campaigns. So from an overview perspective, there's 4 things that we're going to go through. August outlook, what the last 5 years tell us what's likely in store for you as a purchase advertiser. Hot spots and cold spots are specific dates you need to pay attention to and actions you may take. Third is projection models, what the numbers could look like depending on what you focus on. And then finally is the cost environment playbook, 3 actions you can take to maximize your results and or prepare for the future. And I'm going to give you a little bit of a spoiler alert. The forecast for purchase advertisers in August looks pretty good. It's pretty sunny. There's not going to be a whole lot of variability you have to pay attention to. That being said, this is your time to prep for the future. So we're going to go through most of these first 3 things really quickly, but focusing on the cost environment playbook is really where you want your attention this month. All right, so when we talk about the August outlook, really quickly to give you the background on this, I needed the ability to project results for our clients. And I had to figure out a way that I could do it that I felt was simple yet accurate. And so what I did is I dove into 5-year historical meta CPMs, analyzed the trends for the last 5 years for the 4 major conversion types using hundreds of millions of dollars in spend. And then I developed a model and tested it against it. And we found that we could project within about 5% of actuals for our clients that spend $1 million or a month or more in ad spend. And a couple times we've been like within 1% between what we projected and what we actually ended up at. And so it's really important for you to understand, we're using Meta's data because that's where we had the biggest data set, but these percentages apply across platforms. So whether it be Meta or Google or native, and it's starting to apply more and more to AppLovin as more advertisers are coming on. So this isn't a meta forecast, it's a paid traffic forecast because these CPMs change in such a similar fashion. But I want to call attention to, this is a forecast and not a prophecy. Our goal is to give you a good understanding of what's coming up, but things can change. Just like the weather forecast may say it's going to rain and then it doesn't, or the other way around. Things change every year. Our goal is to make sure that you have an understanding of what you need to be watching out for and what the likelihood of these results may be for you. So when we talk about the forecast for August, this is about as boring as it gets. When we've done this month over month, most of the time there's volatility, there's things you have to watch out for. With purchase advertisers, it's going to be pretty steady Eddie. Overall, CPMs are going to come down about 1% between the beginning and the end of the month, and there's not a lot of stuff you need to watch out for. What I really want to make sure that you understand, though, is while we're using CPMs to build this forecast, if you're a performance advertiser, which if you're optimizing for purchases, you are, you don't care about CPMs. You care about CPAs and ROAS. But what's really important is there's a linear correlation between CPMs and those performance metrics of CPA or ROAS. And so you may see the CPMs change and the CTRs change, but as you're watching the overall movement in these CPMs, it's going to directly impact your CPAs and therefore your ROAS. And that's why this forecasting process is so important. So we've talked about this as kind of the overall. I want to have Ross dive into hot spots and cold spots. Teaser, it's not going to be very exciting, but it's important you understand this because while it may not be important in August, it's going to be important for you in the future. So Ross, let's dive into hot spots and cold spots.
Perfect. Thank you so much, John. So this is my cameo in this episode for purchases. And as you said, it is pretty boring, but let's quickly touch on this concept of hot and cold spots. And just so the audience understands what a hot and cold spot is, really how we've defined that is when we see a significant change in cost in a short period of time. So if that cost is increasing, that is a hot spot. If that cost is decreasing, so the general CPM environment, short space of time, those are the indicators for what we would call hot spots and cold spots. And generally what you'll see as we go through future forecasts is there will be hot spots and cold spots, but for this forecast, as John said, pretty steady Eddie. There's no real important dates to highlight where we're seeing them in the forecast. However, what we do normally see is these macro trends, these macro things that are happening on a higher level in our ad accounts and on ad platforms, things that generally will affect all advertisers because they're happening on a larger macro scale than on that micro level. And these are things like brand advertisers who are coming into the auction, dumping a whole bunch of ad spend, buying up a whole bunch of impressions, and they buy on CPMs, John. So that's super cheap, you and I know. And us as performance advertisers, we're buying on, conversions. We want CPAs. And these big brand advertisers are buying up a whole bunch of inventory, which means we don't have any available. So 2 call outs for the month of August in terms of these macro trends. One is our back to school campaigns. We anticipate those starting around the 21st of August. And then the last one, which is a regular occurrence, is the sort of end of month budget dumps where we see sort of high volume impressions being lost in that sort of retail cycle. And that should start around the 25th and end around the end of the month. But as you said, pretty boring, pretty steady, not too much to call out, but those 2 ones at the end of the month, just worth a call out and worth keeping your eyes open for.
Yeah, and 2 notes on this. So the first one is, while the overall performance looks pretty steady, during the last 10 days of August, you're really going to have to pay attention to lower delivery. So as Ross said, when brands are dumping CPM buys, those buys get filled first because all the different platforms go, cool, we're getting someone that's locking in these impressions, and now there's fewer impressions available for us as performance advertisers. So you may just see your ads not deliver to that same budget level that you're accustomed to. Second note is, what you will normally get from us in a hot spot or cold spot is the dates that you're going to need to be paying attention to, what specifically you're paying attention to, so the signs and then the results, and then most importantly, the mistakes that most advertisers make. And we know this because we've done them, of what takes place in a hot spot or a cold spot. So while Ross's segment is short this month, you're really going to want to pay attention to this in future months because it's going to help you plan for the future. All right, projection models. Once again, this is me. My job is to come in and help say this is what's likely to happen with results. Just to give you a quick overview, the view here is looking at the CPM impact on results. So what does the cost environment mean for the overall P&L? Every month we consider the variables, the number of selling days, and then potential conversion rate changes. So for you as a purchase advertiser, if your conversion rate doesn't normally change between July and August, you're going to see kind of what we're seeing in our projection models. But as to give an example of people in the supplement space, August is typically horrible. And so if you're optimizing for purchases and you're doing supplements, you may need to adjust your models because you see that there's a conversion rate change that would become important to you, right? So just something to consider. The result of these models is looking at our evergreen production. What can we expect our evergreen proven base of campaigns that are running consistently to produce? And then this will help us understand the things that we should focus on that month based off the cost environment, so we know what do we need to do to maximize our results and how risky can our actions be. So I typically go through and build out a spreadsheet that looks like this. We've got the last 30 days results, and then we build 3 models. What happens if we maintain our spend? What happens if we maintain our volume? Or what happens if we maintain our cost per conversion? What you will see here is these numbers are super similar because there's going to be such a low level of volatility. But just to quickly explain, if we spend $100,000 in the month of July, let's say we're making $20 sales, $250,000 in revenue, 2.5 ROAS. From transitioning from July to August, we're going to see a 1% improvement in CPMs. And so we're going to be able to reach a slightly different number of people. Same thing, maintaining volume. There's just not much change here, right? It's just pretty much the same. And so these models are not very exciting for you. Everything's going to be around $250,000 in revenue. ROAS is going to adjust slightly. So I honestly wouldn't pay attention to these models this much this month. It's just like, hey, things are going to be pretty steady Eddie. And because of that, what we need to focus on is, since our costs are steady and our results are steady, we need to be taking actions that are going to prep for high cost environments. Right? This is when we can focus on taking medium risk actions to prepare for the high cost times that we know are going to be around the corner in Q4. And so that's what I want to dive into with our cost environment playbook. So every month we're going to try and give you 3 plays that you can run to be able to prepare for the future and or maximize your results. And we start on at the beginning of the month, high lift plays. So what are the things that are going to take the most amount of effort that you can start on now, and then move into medium lift and low lift plays? And this is really just about how much time and effort they take. So let's start with the high lift CRO testing. It's really important in a time period like this to review your funnel performance and identify which steps hold the most leverage to help you reduce your CAC for the same amount of improvement. So as an example, with our clients, we have a dashboard that shows us how much can we improve our CAC if we make a 1% performance improvement at every step. We're not improving the individual step by 1%, right? So a 10%, we're not going to say 1% of 10% versus 1% of 90%. We're saying a true 1% incremental change. So going from 10% to 11% or 90% to 91%, that allows us to see how much leverage there is in a step. And so by doing that, we can say we really should focus on these steps in our funnel because they hold the most leverage for us to reduce our CAC. So therefore, we can create more room in the math for us to scale. And so once you understand where to focus your efforts, then you go through and you ask yourself the question, why? So we review from a user perspective to come up with hypotheses that could move the needle. So as an example, if we're seeing that our add to cart step is our highest leverage point and people are getting stuck before adding to cart, we would go and look at the user experience and say, is someone having to make a choice here? Maybe we can eliminate that choice and see the impact. And so when we talk about this, what we're trying to look at is not headline testing and button testing. It's our biggest constriction in our cost is happening at this step. And then we really ask ourselves, can we lengthen the funnel, shorten the funnel, or change the funnel to improve our performance? So where do we focus? Why are we experiencing that constriction? And then how do we go through and make those results, make those experiments happen that are going to improve the performance? And so for you, when we talk about CRO testing, this is what I would focus on in the beginning of August, is asking yourself these questions so you can go through and identify ways that you can improve your performance, lower your CAC, because that's going to become really important as you move into more expensive months. Second thing is proven angles to new mediums. So this is something that our team is currently heavily focused on right now. Is, let's say we always start our testing with video ads. It's been our core competency for a long time. In higher cost times, we want to be able to put more spend on multiple creative types, and images are really important because you typically get better economics with images. So now is the time to migrate your video ads to images and advertorials to utilize all of the inventory and potentially lower costs. So what our team has recently focused on is selecting 10 of our top performing video angles, and we're testing images and advertorials on Meta to find assets that we could then plug and play to native and display. So far, in a very limited amount of testing, this has added 10% more sales volume. And I know more is coming because we have more stuff in the pipeline, and Ross is currently in the process of scaling things up. Ross, can you just touch on really quickly when we're seeing this difference in inventory? Is there anything from the media buying side that you want to call out when it comes to consistency or performance with that migration?
I think a careful consideration that you and I have seen when we change this medium is we know that video does a lot of the heavy lifting in terms of the sale process. So something that people should consider when they're changing mediums is that potentially don't hold the same benchmark across mediums. And what I mean by that is you and I have seen potentially a 20% increase in a pre-sale metric for an image ad, but then the sales metrics shake out. So basically, if we're looking at images, we know that the video isn't being consumed, so the sales mechanism itself is not doing the heavy lifting. So there's definitely a higher sort of call cost for a call, but ultimately we're seeing the sales numbers shake out. So it's worth considering in terms of the media buying, just making sure that you're considering the medium difference and seeing if there's a change, because it is a different sales mechanism.
Yeah, and that's a really good point. So just to give a specific example, with our video ads with one of our clients, we can afford $25 for a cost per call with video ads. Using images and advertorials, our cost per call is more in the $30 to $35 range, right? So it's 20 to 40% higher, but the close rate is so much better on the phone because people have read the content. And we had to make that adjustment when optimizing of saying, hey, we have to hold these to different benchmarks because they truly have different performance, even though it's the same message on the same platform. They're two very different performance metrics. So hopefully that gives you an understanding of what Ross said in a tangible way. That's a really, really important and great point. So thanks for throwing that in, Ross. Okay. Last one, which is your lowest lift play, is taking your proven angles and iterating them and stockpiling them for your higher cost times. So in higher cost times, we want to take really low risk actions. So the way that we run, we always need to be launching new creatives because platforms prioritize and give you see better metrics on ads that are new. And so what we've focused on is when we have ads that perform, we go through and we develop iterations of them and stockpile them. So that way, when we get into a higher cost time, we're able to continue launching the same volume, but we're not testing as many net new angles that are unproven. So an example for you with this is we've used an NAN automation to ingest all of our performing angles video ads. I click a button and it goes and ingests the videos, downloads the transcripts, processes them, and then the agent writes new scripts and then produces the voiceover. So we just have to go get them made. And what's been really important about this is video editing has been able to turn out 15 videos a week, and we're only launching 6 of them at a time. So over the course of a month, we're stockpiling 9 a week. We'll have 36 ads that are ready in the hopper for our higher cost times. And this is something that's really simple for you to do, to be able to take those best performing angles, develop iterations, and you can be really specific with ChatGPT, or if you use something else, Claude, whatever, when you're doing this at NAN, explaining, I want it to follow this same storyline, but I truly want it to be different. There's a massive opportunity here to leverage this type of thing with AI. It's great when it can get proven performance and spit it out. And Ross, I think we've seen really good performance with these iterations. Do you want to speak on that really quickly?
Yeah, it's been a new quiver in our belt lately, where we've been deploying these iterations. It hasn't been huge pressure on the creative team, so they've been able to go and dedicate their time and resource to new stuff. And we were hesitant when we tried this, but they've really helped add to the volume, and especially the sentiment that we carry in terms of our diversification. It's been great to be able to add these really easy, and it's not to say they're less valuable, but they're really just remixes of our original best performers, and helped us just continue being able to have more ammo, that you always say, more ammo in the chamber to be able to shoot when we're running short, or if we're just needing some extra volume from a client request. So these have been really, really great to add to our quiver.
Yeah, and I think what's so important about that is we want creative strategy focused on new angles. So I want the person's time focused on research and coming up with different ways to attract our market. Could we let AI do that? Yeah, we haven't found that to be more successful yet. But now we've been able to move the iterations process away from people and onto AI because it's being fed stuff that works. The only part that we have of this that is human now is the editing piece, and it's just plug and play because we already have these things in place. So I think that's a great point. We're focusing human capital on new angle iterations or new angle variations. And then the iterative part is where AI is coming in. That's been a massive win for us. So hopefully that gives you 3 really useful things that you can focus on in the month of August to run your system so you can prepare for the higher cost times around the corner in Q4. I think it's just something that, once again, while there's not a lot of volatility in the overall ad spend scenario, this is the time to prep for Q4 to make sure that you're set up for success. Thanks for watching this month's paid traffic forecast. Just by watching it, you and your team now know what to expect from your overall performance and the hot spots and cold spots you need to pay attention to over the next 30 days. If you want to be this prepared every month, there's 2 things you can do. First, you can subscribe or follow our social channels so this information shows up in your feed at the beginning of every month. Second, if you want the information early, you can subscribe to our free list where you'll get the information delivered to your inbox a day ahead of time. If there's something you think we can do to improve our monthly update, just drop us a comment below and let us know what you think that is. And finally, if you're a business owner looking for someone who can help you develop an advertising ecosystem that produces more sustainable, predictable scale, make sure to head over to decyphered.com/start. On that page, you'll understand how our process works and the steps you can take to see if we might be a good fit to help you. Thanks so much, and we'll see you next month.